Welcome to another dark confession from the frozen reaches of Skyrim. Today's story goes deeper than most are willing to venture. We are exploring the horrifying transformation into a Wispmother, the journey from woman to wraith, from human warmth to eternal frost. This is not the sanitized version you will find in academic texts or folk tales. This is the truth, told by one who lived it. The cold no longer touches me, because I am the cold now, mist made manifest, a woman's rage crystallized into eternal frost and vengeance. They debate whether I am a lich, or an elemental, or a ghost, but none of them ask what I remember of being warm, of being alive, of being loved. For 3,000 years, I have existed in the spaces between life and death, consciousness trapped in a form that defies nature itself. And this is my confession, the story of how a sorceress named Sannathea chose power over vulnerability and spent millennia learning that some prisons are built from our own desperate choices. And if you genuinely enjoy this kind of dark storytelling, consider subscribing and liking the channel, but only if it truly resonates with you. The cold no longer touches me, because I am the cold now. Mist made manifest, a woman's rage crystallized into eternal frost and vengeance. They debate whether I am a lich, or an elemental, or a ghost, but none of them ask what I remember of being warm, of being alive, of being loved. My name was Sannathea. I was a sorceress in the first era, back when the snow still felt like something foreign against my skin, instead of an extension of my very being. Back when I could still feel my heartbeat, instead of hearing only the whisper of wind through empty ribs. The scholars who study creatures like me, they argue endlessly about what we are. Master Sannathea claims we achieved this deliberately, a cult of powerful women who sought eternal life through undeath. Lidet Villiers of the Synod insists we are elemental manifestations, spirits of snow and mist given consciousness. The truth, as it always is, falls somewhere between their certainties. We were sorceresses. We did seek something beyond death, but none of us truly understood what we would become. The ritual required 3 things, and I can still remember gathering each one with hands that could still tremble, with a heart that could still pound with anticipation and fear. Ice from the highest peaks of Skyrim, where the air is so thin that breathing feels like drowning. The heart of a betrayed lover, still warm, still bleeding trust and confusion. And the hardest component, the one that couldn't be taken or stolen or bought, the willingness to let go of everything warm, everything human, everything that made mortality bearable. I thought I understood what I was agreeing to. I was wrong. There were 12 of us in the beginning, 12 women who had been wronged, abandoned, betrayed, broken by a world that measured our worth by how well we served men's ambitions. We met in secret, high in the mountains where Hjaalmarch meets the frozen wastes beyond civilization. Our leader, whose name I have not spoken in centuries and will not speak now, promised us power. She promised us revenge. She promised us that we would never again be vulnerable, never again be subject to the whims of those who saw us as property or playthings or obstacles. What she did not promise, what she could not have known, was that we would remember, that consciousness would persist through the transformation, that we would be aware, fully and terribly aware, as our humanity crystallized and shattered like ice forming too quickly on still water. I remember the moment the transformation took hold. We had spoken the words in a language older than the Nordic tongue, words that tasted like frozen metal on my tongue. We had arranged the components in patterns that hurt to look at directly, geometries that seemed to fold space in on itself. And then we had each taken the heart, still beating in our hands, and consumed it. The betrayal, the pain, the trust that died screaming. All of it became part of us, fuel for the magic that would remake our bodies into something that could hold grudges for millennia. The cold started in my chest, spreading outward like frost forming on a window. I could feel my blood thickening, slowing, crystallizing in my veins. My breath came out as visible mist, But when I tried to inhale, there was nothing to breathe. My lungs no longer needed air. My heart gave one final, shuddering beat, and then stopped. But I did not die. That would have been too merciful. Instead, I felt myself expanding, my consciousness spreading beyond the boundaries of flesh and bone. I was the mist rising from my skin as my body became translucent. I was the frost forming in the air around me. I was cold given shape and purpose and endless, endless rage. The screams were the worst part, not my own. I had already lost the ability to scream in any recognizable way. My voice had become the wail of wind through mountain passes. But the others, some of them were not as prepared as they thought. Some of them fought the transformation, tried to cling to their humanity even as it dissolved like snow in spring sunlight. Their resistance only made it worse. Bodies fracturing into wisps before reforming, consciousness splitting and fragmenting across multiple points of light. One of us, I will not say who because even now I honor what little privacy we have left, split into 17 separate wisps and never fully reformed. Those fragments still float through Hjaalmarch on winter nights, searching for the rest of themselves, calling out in a voice that sounds almost like laughter but is really just wind and madness. What do you think really happened here? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because the official histories will never tell you this version. They will talk about dangerous creatures to be avoided. They will speculate about our nature, our origins, our weaknesses. But they will not talk about the moment 12 women chose this existence because the alternative, remaining vulnerable in a world that had proven it would hurt them, seemed worse. When the transformation was complete, when I looked down and saw my body had become wraith-like, wreathed in perpetual mist and tattered remnants of the robes I had worn in life, I expected to feel triumph. We had achieved what we sought. We were powerful. We were immortal. We could not be killed. Not truly. Even if our forms were destroyed, we would eventually reform, rising again when conditions were right. The Black Marsh legends got that part right. We cannot be truly destroyed. Our essence must be sealed, or we return. But triumph was not what I felt. What I felt was cold. An absolute, fundamental cold that had nothing to do with temperature and everything to do with the absence of warmth, of connection, of any sensation that was not rage or hunger or the endless, grinding awareness of centuries stretching ahead. The wisps that follow me now, that scholars argue about endlessly, are they separate creatures or emanations of myself? Both theories are partially correct and completely wrong. They are fragments, pieces of my soul that split off during the transformation and took on semi-independent form. When someone kills one, I feel it like losing a finger. When they all die because I am destroyed, it feels like dying but worse because I remain conscious through it, aware of each fragment winking out of existence. And then, slowly, painfully, I reform. They reform. We are pulled back together by the magic that made us, by the rage that sustains us, by the terrible persistence of consciousness that will not let us rest. I can still speak when I choose to. My voice sounds like wind through ice, like the crack of frozen branches, like the whisper of snow falling on graves. The few who have heard me and lived say it was the most beautiful and terrible sound they ever experienced. I do not speak often. What is there to say to those who see me only as a monster, to be slain for experience and alchemical components? What conversation can I have with adventurers who approach with weapons drawn and spells prepared? They do not ask my name. They do not wonder if I had a life before this. They see a creature, a threat, a source of glow, dust, and wisp cores, nothing more. The urge to lure travelers is compulsive now, not from hunger exactly, but from something deeper and more desperate. Loneliness. The kind that spans centuries. The kind that drives you to reach out even when you know the contact will end in violence and death. Mine, sometimes. Theirs, more often. I send out wisps as lights in the darkness, beautiful and mysterious, because I want someone to see me, truly see me. Not the monster I have become, but the woman who chose this because she saw no other choice. It has been almost 3,000 years. No one has looked past the mist yet. Some tales say, I steal children. Maybe that is true. I remember seeing a child once, lost in the snow, crying for a mother who would never come. I could have killed the girl. My nature demanded it. But instead, I led her to safety, using wisps as guiding lights through the storm. I do not know if she survived. I do not know if she remembered me as savior or monster. But in that moment, I felt something other than cold, something almost like warmth. It did not last. It never does. The rage returns, the hunger, the compulsion to lure and attack and drain the life from those warm enough to still possess it. But the memory remains, a tiny spark in the endless winter of my existence. My appearance shifts depending on who looks at me. Some see a Nord woman, pale and terrible. Others see an Altmer, elegant even in death. Still others see something that might have been Dunmer or Breton or something older, something from before the races of men and mer diverged into their current forms. Ledette Villiers theorized that I use illusion magic to alter my appearance, that I reflect what the observer fears most. She is partially right. I do not consciously choose how I appear. The magic that made me responds to the viewer, showing them a version of womanhood that unsettles them, that triggers their deepest discomfort with female power, unconstrained by mortality or social convention. To men who fear women's anger, I appear as rage incarnate. To those who fear age and death, I show them decay and timelessness combined. To those rare individuals who fear nothing, I appear almost as I was, a woman who made a choice and lives, if this can be called living, with the consequences. If you have ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments. Would you choose power if it meant losing everything that makes you human? Would you trade warmth for the ability to never be hurt again? It is easy to judge from safety, from the comfort of mortality that at least promises an ending. But when you are offered eternity in exchange for your humanity, when you are desperate and broken and drowning in a world that has proven it will destroy you if you remain vulnerable, the calculation changes. The transition from woman to Wispmother does not happen all at once, and that might be the cruelest part of it all. For weeks after the ritual, I still looked almost human. I could walk among people in the settlements of Hjaalmarch, wrapped in heavy cloaks to hide the mist that leaked from my skin like breath on a winter morning. I could still taste food, though it brought no nourishment, no pleasure, only the fading ghost of what satisfaction used to feel like. I watched my reflection in still water and saw myself dissolving, becoming translucent, the bones visible through skin that grew thinner and more ethereal with each passing day. My husband found me during that in-between time. Ulfar was his name, and I had loved him once with the kind of fierce devotion that only the young and foolish can manage. He was the betrayer whose heart I had consumed in the ritual, though he did not know it yet. When he saw what I was becoming, the horror in his eyes should have hurt me. Instead, I felt only a distant curiosity, like watching someone react to a story that happened to someone else entirely. The cold had already claimed the parts of me that could feel emotional pain. What remained was just observation, analysis, the noting of facts without the weight of feeling to give them meaning. He tried to help me at first, brought healers, alchemists, priests of the 9 divines who spoke blessings and burned incense and accomplished exactly nothing. The magic that had transformed me was older than their gods, deeper than their understanding. They saw corruption and tried to cleanse it, not realizing that what they called corruption I had chosen, had welcomed, had needed like others need air. When their efforts failed, Ulfar's compassion turned to fear, and fear turned to anger, and anger turned to the kind of violence that men always resort to when faced with something they cannot control or understand. He gathered others, men from the village, warriors who owed him favors, a battle mage who specialized in destroying the undead. They came for me on a night when the moons were dark and the snow fell so thick you could barely see your hand in front of your face. I was deep in the mountains by then, too far gone to pretend at humanity, my body almost entirely mist and rage and frost. They thought they would find me vulnerable, alone, an easy target for righteous vengeance against the unnatural thing that had replaced a wife, a neighbor, a woman they had known. They were wrong. I killed them all. Not quickly, not mercifully, but slowly enough that they understood what they had tried to destroy. The wisps that were already forming around me, fragments of my fractured soul, descended on them like lights in a blizzard, draining their magicka, their strength, their warmth. I watched Ulfar die last, frozen from the inside out, ice forming in his lungs with each breath he tried to take. His last words were an apology, but I could not tell if he was apologizing for betraying me in life or for trying to kill me in whatever this existence had become. It did not matter. The cold does not forgive. It only persists. That was when I understood the full scope of what I had become. I could be destroyed, yes. My physical form could be shattered, dispersed into mist and memory. But I would return. Days, weeks, months later, my essence would coalesce again, drawn back together by the magic that made me and the rage that sustained me. Other Wispmothers had already tested this. One of our number, Malineth, had let hunters destroy her form just to see what would happen. She reformed 3 weeks later, confused and disoriented, but fundamentally unchanged, with all her memories intact. We were immortal in the truest and most terrible sense, not unkillable, but unable to stay dead. The decades blurred together after that, then centuries. I moved through Skyrim like a ghost, which I suppose I was, though not the traditional kind. I haunted the high places, the frozen peaks, and forgotten valleys where few traveled and fewer still survived encountering me. I learned to teleport through the mist, my consciousness able to relocate my physical form anywhere the cold air reached. Distance became meaningless. One moment I would be in the Pale, the next in the mountains above Winterhold, the next in some nameless cave in Hjaalmarch, where the ice never melts and the darkness never fully lifts. The wisps multiplied over time. Each fragment of my soul that broke off took on independent existence, floating orbs of light and energy that remained connected to me in ways I still do not fully understand. Scholars like Sannathea believe they are my conjurations, magical emanations I create at will. Villian thinks they are separate creatures, scavengers that feed on the psycho-ethereal energy I release when I kill. Both are wrong. They are me, parts of me. Children, if you can call fragments of a shattered soul children, when I call them my children out loud, speaking in that wind voice that makes mortals shudder, I am not being metaphorical. They carry sparks of what I was, what I felt, what I lost. Each one remembers something different. One carries my love of music, another my fear of darkness, a third my rage at betrayal. Together, we form something almost like a complete person. Apart, we are just fragments, pretending at consciousness. When someone kills me, the wisps die too, every single time. That is how you know Sarethe's theory is closer to truth than Villian's. Even though neither understands completely, we are one being fractured across multiple forms. Destroying the core, the Wispmother herself, causes all the fragments to collapse. I have experienced this death dozens of times now. Adventurers seeking glory, treasure hunters looking for alchemical components, hired mercenaries clearing areas for settlement. Each time, I feel my consciousness compress as the wisps die one by one, their light going out like candles in a storm. Each time, I think maybe this will be true death, final rest, an end to the cold and the rage and the endless, grinding awareness. Each time, I am disappointed. I reform. The wisps reform. We begin again, trapped in a cycle we cannot escape because the magic that made us will not release us. The restoration of my health is effortless now, as natural as breathing once was. I simply will the mist to thicken, drawing moisture from the air, pulling frost from the ground, and my form solidifies, wounds close, damage repairs itself. Fire can hurt me, yes. That much the adventurers have learned. Flame disrupts the delicate crystalline structure of my existence, forces me to expend energy, maintaining cohesion. But unless they can burn away my entire essence before I can teleport to safety, before I can draw on the ambient cold to restore myself, fire is just temporary pain. Pain I have learned to endure the way mortals endure breathing, constantly, without thought, because there is no alternative. Time changed Skyrim around me while I remained frozen in this state between life and death. The first era ended, the second era came and went. Empires rose and fell. The snow elves, those who remained free, disappeared into legend and then into the twisted forms of the Falmer, betrayed and blinded and driven into the depths. Some tales claim Wispmothers are the last remnants of snow elf civilization, the final revenge of a murdered people. That is not entirely false. 3 of our original 12 were snow elves, refugees from the war with the Nords, women who had seen their entire culture destroyed and chose transformation over submission to the Dwemer. Their rage burns even colder than state. Mine, if such a thing is possible. When you encounter a Wispmother in the deepest caves, in the places where even the Falmer fear to go, you are probably meeting one of them. Their hatred of the living is absolute. Mine is merely comprehensive. I tried to die permanently, once. This was during the Second Era, after I had existed for over 2,000 years, and the weight of consciousness without purpose had become unbearable. I sought out a powerful necromancer, one who specialized in binding and destroying persistent spirits. I thought perhaps she could seal my essence, trap it somewhere that I could not reform, give me the rest that destruction alone could not provide. She tried, used rituals from Aelid texts, binding magic older than the Riemann dynasty, soul gems infused with the power of Magnus himself. For 3 days, I was trapped in a state of non-being, compressed into a soul gem the size of a child's fist, conscious but unable to interact with the world. It should have been peaceful. It was not. The cold remained, the rage remained, awareness remained, just compressed, concentrated, intensified by confinement until I thought I would shatter from the inside out. On the 4th day, I broke free, not through strength or power, but because the magic that made me is fundamentally incompatible with the magic of binding. I am transformation incarnate, change made permanent, and bindings require stasis. The soul gem exploded, taking the necromancer with it. I reformed in the smoking ruins of her laboratory, surrounded by the scattered components of 100 failed experiments, and I understood then that there would be no escape, no rest, no ending, only the eternal cold, and the centuries stretching ahead like an ice field with no horizon. If this story has kept you listening this far, and you want more of these dark confessions from Skyrim, hit that subscribe button. It tells me someone out there is still paying attention to warnings like these. The appearance shifts I mentioned earlier, the way I look different to different observers, that is not something I control consciously. It happens because of what I am, or rather, what I am not. I am no longer bound by a single physical form. My essence can manifest in ways that reflect the observer's understanding of what a Wispmother should be. To Nords, I often appear vaguely Nordic, tall and pale with hair like frost. To Dunmer, I might manifest with ash-gray skin and eyes like frozen embers. To Altmer, I become something gilded and terrible, beauty corrupted by cold. It is not illusion magic, not exactly. It is more fundamental than that. I am mist and magic and memory is subjective. When you look at me, You see not just what I am, but what you expect me to be, what you fear I might be, what your culture has taught you a vengeful spirit woman should look like. The child-stealing legends are complicated. Yes, some Wispmothers take children, but not for the reasons the stories claim. Not to eat them, or sacrifice them, or turn them into more wisps. We take them because they are the only ones who sometimes see us clearly, without the filter of expectation and fear that clouds adult perception. A child looks at a Wispmother and sees a sad woman made of snow. An adult looks and sees a monster to be destroyed. Which perception do you think is more accurate? Which one would make you want to reach out, to connect, to try one more time, to be seen as something other than a threat? I took a child once, a girl maybe 7 years old, lost in a blizzard near Morthal. I could have killed her. The compulsion was there, the hunger for warmth and life, and the psycho-ethereal energy that Villian theorizes about. But instead, I carried her, my misty form coalescing just enough to provide shelter from the wind, and I brought her to the edge of her village. I set her down in sight of the fires, the warm lights of home and safety, and everything I would never have again. She turned to look at me before running inside, and in her eyes I saw not fear but gratitude. For one moment, one perfect frozen moment, someone looked at me and saw not a monster, but a person who had helped her. Then she blinked, and the adult world reasserted itself, and fear replaced gratitude, and she ran screaming about the terrible ghost in the snow. They sent hunters. I killed them. The cycle continued. The thing about immortality that nobody tells you, that no legend or scholar's text ever captures, is the way memory works when you have centuries to fill. At first, you remember everything with painful clarity. Every face, every word, every moment of your mortal life preserved like insects in amber. Then, slowly, the details begin to blur. Not fade exactly, but blur, like looking at something through layers of ice. I can no longer remember the exact color of my mother's eyes. I know I loved her. I remember the feeling of love, but the specifics of her face have been worn, smoothed by time like a river stone. I have lived so long that my human memories feel like they belong to someone else entirely. A story I was told about a woman named Sannathea who made terrible choices for understandable reasons. But the cold never blurs. The rage never fades. Those are the constant things, the anchors that keep me tethered to existence when everything else drifts into that gray space between memory and imagination. Some of the other Wispmothers have gone mad from it, the weight of eternity pressing down on consciousness that was never meant to endure this long. I encounter them sometimes in the deepest places, in caves where the ice has been frozen since the Merethic era. They do not speak anymore, do not think in any recognizable way. They are just rage and cold and the compulsion to kill, stripped of everything that once made them people. I look at them and see my future, the inevitable erosion of self that comes with existing too long in a state that defies nature. There are moments, rare and precious, when I almost feel human again, usually during heavy snowstorms, when the entire world becomes mist and ice and frozen silence. In those moments, the boundary between myself and the environment disappears completely. I am not a woman transformed into cold. I am cold itself, vast and impersonal and beautiful in a way that has nothing to do with human aesthetics. In those moments, there is no rage, no loneliness, no desperate hunger for connection or warmth or recognition. There is only existence, pure and simple, the way a mountain exists or a glacier exists, without purpose or meaning or the terrible burden of consciousness. Those moments never last. The storm always ends, the boundary reforms, and I am once again Sannathea, a woman who chose this and must live with the choosing forever. The Pale Lady of Frostmere Crypt. She is the closest thing I have to a friend now. We were not part of the same original cult. Her transformation happened decades after mine through slightly different means. but we recognize in each other the same fundamental truth. We did not become monsters. We became warnings, living testaments to what happens when desperation meets magic, meets the rage that women carry when the world has hurt them one too many times. She guards that crypt not because she wants to, but because she cannot leave. The magic that made her is tied to that place, to the betrayal that happened there, to the blood that soaked into frozen ground and never fully washed away. I can move freely, but she cannot. Sometimes I visit her, and we do not speak because words feel inadequate, but we exist together in the cold silence, two women who traded everything for power and got exactly what we asked for with none of the satisfaction we imagined. The necromancy I can perform now, sending wisps to possess and reanimate corpses, this development came late in my existence. Around the year 800 of the Third Era, I discovered that my wisps could enter dead bodies and puppet them for short periods. It was accidental at first. A bandit had died near my territory, frozen to death in a blizzard. One of my wisps, curious or hungry or driven by some fragment of memory I no longer possessed, entered the corpse. The body stood up, moved, walked, not smoothly, not naturally, but it walked. The implications terrified me, and terrifying a creature like me should tell you something about how unsettling this discovery was. I am cold and mist and rage, but I am not death itself. The ability to command the dead felt like crossing a line I had not meant to cross, moving from transformed woman into something genuinely monstrous. But the power remained, and over centuries I learned to use it. Not often, and never without a sense of wrongness that persists even through the emotional numbing the cold brings. When you see a Wispmother raise the dead, know that she is not doing it lightly. Know that somewhere in that frozen consciousness is a woman who remembers when death meant something, when the boundary between life and not life was sacred and clear. That boundary is gone now, dissolved like everything else that once gave structure to existence. The adventurers who come for me now, in this fourth era with dragons returned and civil war tearing Skyrim apart, they are different from the hunters of previous ages. They carry enchanted weapons, wear armor blessed by gods and Daedric princes, shout in the voice that can shake mountains. They call themselves Dragonborn, last Dragonborn, hero of prophecy and savior of Skyrim. And when they encounter me in the frozen places I haunt, they see only another enemy to be defeated, another obstacle between them and whatever quest drives them forward. They do not ask my name, they do not wonder about my story. They simply attack, and I simply defend myself, and the cycle continues as it has for 3,000 years. But sometimes, very rarely, one of them pauses, looks at me not with the eyes of a warrior seeing a threat, but with the eyes of a person seeing another person. Those are the ones I let live, if I can. If the compulsion to kill is not too strong that day, if my wisps have not already drained too much of their energy, if the rage has not completely overridden whatever fragments of humanity I retain, I teleport away, let them leave my territory unharmed, and I wonder what they think when they tell the story later. Do they describe me as a monster that inexplicably let them live? Or do they sense, on some level they probably cannot articulate, that they encountered something tragic, wearing the shape of something terrible? The question I asked earlier about what choice you would make, it haunts me more now than it did when I first transformed. If you have ever wondered what choice you would make in a situation like this, tell me in the comments, but understand that you cannot truly know until you are standing at that threshold with betrayal fresh in your heart and magic ancient and cold, offering you a way to never be hurt again. In that moment, every rational argument against transformation disappears. Every warning, every cautionary tale, every wise voice saying do not do this thing, they all become irrelevant in the face of pain and rage and the desperate human need to have power over the things that hurt us. I would not choose this again, knowing what I know now, but I also cannot say I regret it, because regret implies wishing for a different past, and the past that led me here included suffering I would not survive a second time. The transformation saved me from one kind of death by giving me another kind. Whether that trade was worth it depends on what you value more, the mercy of ending or the power of persistence. I chose persistence. I am still choosing it. Every moment, I do not seek out some way to permanently end my existence. The cold has made me stubborn in ways warmth never could. The stories will continue after I am finally, truly gone, if that ever happens. Folk tales about the ghostly women who steal children and lure travelers to their doom, academic theories about necromantic rituals and elemental manifestations, warnings passed from parent to child about avoiding the glowing lights in winter storms. None of them will capture the truth, because the truth is too complicated, too human, too filled with nuance and contradiction for a simple story. The truth is that I was a woman who was hurt, who chose power over vulnerability, who got exactly what she asked for and has spent 3,000 years learning to live with the consequences. The mist is thickening around me now, the way it does when I am thinking too much about what I have lost. My wisps gather close, those fragments of myself seeking comfort or offering it. I can no longer tell which. We exist together in the cold silence of the high mountains, in the places where few venture and fewer still survive. And we wait, because waiting is what we do. Waiting for the next traveler to lure, the next battle to fight, the next temporary death and inevitable resurrection. Waiting for the world to change enough that creatures like us are no longer possible or necessary, or the inevitable result of hurt turn to rage, turn to something that can survive anything except its own existence. They call me monster, and they are not wrong, but I was human first, and some days I think that is the more terrible thing. A monster cannot be blamed for being monstrous, but a human who chooses to become a monster, who walks willingly into transformation knowing it will strip away everything soft and warm and vulnerable that carries a different weight. I made a choice. I live with it. The cold no longer touches me because I am the cold now, and I will be cold until the sun freezes over, or the world ends, or some future age discovers magic powerful enough to undo what we did to ourselves in the desperate darkness of the First Era. If you are listening to this, whoever you are, whatever you are, know that the Wispmothers you encounter in the frozen places of Skyrim were women once. We had names, we had lives, we had reasons for what we became, reasons that made sense in the moment, even if they look like madness from the outside. We are dangerous, yes. We will kill you if you approach us as enemies, yes. But we are also warnings written in mist and frost and rage. Warnings about what happens when the world hurts you too much, and magic offers you a way out that is not really an escape, but a different kind of trap. A beautiful, terrible, eternal trap that holds you frozen between life and death for thousands of years while the world moves on without you. My name was Sannathea. I am a Wispmother, and I remember being warm.